Breaches of LVR is another tool that Bankwest uses in an unconscionable manner. This is the most common. I hand up a document being an email from Bankwest manager to another Bankwest manager. The paragraph that I refer to in this email reads as, I've spoken to the valuer again Friday to gauge his opinion, and I suggested a reduction of say 20% of the existing valuation, and he was of the opinion that this was a bit bullish and maybe 10 to 15% is nearer the mark. He did comment if he revalued he would be utilising the existing pre-sales for the 5 units as these contracts are in place and have been verified by the client's solicitor that they are still valid and the discount would only apply to the remaining units. The email goes on to simulate the effect of the reduced price on the LVR position of the project. I believe that Bankwest is instructing the valuers to value the property using different and lower valuation methods to those outlined in the original facility terms. This would mean that the bank has breached the client's loan contract by opting for an alternate method to that stated in the facility documents.
What in the end then was the breach that they used to send in the receivers? Okay.
It was the LVR.
It was the LVR, okay. But there was nothing else that you're aware of? So they took you on despite the fact that the LVR was not met, and then they used the fact that the LVR was not met to bring in the receivers? Okay, thank you.
It now has been made public by comments from Treasury that Bankwest was in dire straits and faced being wound up at the time of my collapse. However, they stated they stopped paying me because of a buyer's caveat. 4 years later, and six statements of claims. They dropped the caveat story and now allege new defaults. The bank now say my first breach was placing the companies into administration, but I only did that because Bankwest forced me.
On the 10th of August that year, just a few weeks after the valuation was given to us, Bankwest advised us our interest rate margins would double.
The second fraud that CBA committed out of triggering default, was that Bankwest had loan documents with its clients which concealed penalty interest. Deliberately concealing penalty interest is a crime. The case referred to me by my barrister was Fatimi versus Bryant. What I need to get across is the magnitude of the penalty. I can prove to the standards required by the High Court that the magnitude of the penalty multiplies the bank's profit 14 times, 1,400% more than they would get if the penalty was not there.
So you're saying if a bank lends money, say at 7.5% to a business, and all of a sudden there's some reason for default and they put the penalty rates on at 18% instead of 7.5%, that is about 14 times more profit on that particular loan.
Yeah.
I presume that it's still in there, the right to claim the penalty interest is just hidden, and you have to follow the trail through to
yes.
Bankwest wouldn't be able to enforce penalty interest unless it was in there somewhere.
Oh, it's in there. It's in the general terms. It took a long while to work it out, but let me say that they got it past me, and I've been in it all my life. They got it past my banking consultant, and he's been in it at a more senior level than me for just as long, and they got it past the bank's lawyers and my lawyers. It takes a while to tell you, but I'll try and summarise it. The way in which the interest is concealed is clever and it's complicated. You rely on the financing proposal for one thing only. Who are you going to give your business to? Who are you going to pay an application fee? Whose value are you going to use? Bankwest, I decided to go with. It said, you will, in their financing proposal, you will have to sign either facility terms or general terms. I ring my broker up and say, oh, do they want, the general terms are for overdrafts. Do they want my overdraft business? No, no. Well, why might I, why this, or general terms, oh, it's just a standard letter. You'll be signing facility terms. So they go through the approval process. Then I get a letter that says, dear Jim, you will have, here's your facility terms. That's what I'm expecting. But the letter, and I wouldn't, myself, I consider myself expert. I would only have picked this up one time in 100, but I did. They changed the word or to and. You will have to sign facility terms and general terms. There were no general terms. So it's just a typo. But I rang my broker. I said, look, do they want my bloody overdraft or not? And he said, no, they don't. I said, well, why am I signing general terms? He said, you're not. And I said, well, it says I have to. And he says, well, I've never seen the general terms myself. We're in business loans. And I said, well, they're telling me I've got to sign them. You better get them. So they came back. I spoke to Bankwest themselves and said, do you really want me to sign these general terms? And why? And they said, well, I don't know why. It's not usual, but creditor insisting on it and you're getting close to your time, you better sign them. So I did. Don't mistake me for saying the banks are dummies. They're not. They're the smartest people on the continent and they're crooks. That's what I'm saying. And you proved me wrong, I'll be delighted. But this is meant to be deceptive. Eventually they put a debit of 300 grand through my account. I came back and said, what's this? And it's penalty interest rate. Where do you get the penalty from? And they wrote me a letter. If you read the general terms, there's no link to the general terms because it doesn't define the excess rate or the default rate. What it does define is an overdue rate. But that term's not used in the facility terms, so you don't know to look for that. And it's 30 pages of fine print and with an index 9 pages long. But when you go in on overdue rate, what does it say? It says it's that rate so described in the facility terms. And then it says, if it's not defined in the facility terms, it's 7% over the bank, over the overdraft rate, which is 5% more than the rate you agreed to, plus 7% on top of that, they've got a 12% penalty.
So that's in which, the general or the facility?
That is in the general terms.
Okay.
Bankwest has mastered the art of implementing penalty interest where they can through various technical defaults. I've got a set of facility terms here that nowhere identifies penalty interest rates being 2 times, sometimes 3 times the normal rate.
Now, the penalty interest, we've had suggestions during the course of the inquiry that the penalty interest things were hidden, that they were hard to find, and that even experienced solicitors and mortgage advisors,
default interest,
the default interest provisions, hadn't picked up that they were there. Do you have a response to that?
Sorry, could you repeat the question?
Well, the evidence that we've had was that the obligation to pay penalty interest and the size of it, the default interest, whatever you may call it, wasn't readily apparent, and even experienced solicitors and mortgage advisors had failed to identify the severity of the default interest. Is it hidden? Is it is it
default interest? The standard should be within the terms and conditions of the
the argument is that it was almost impossible to find. You had to go from one to the other and then back to the other and back and work your way through, and it was like it was deliberately hidden.
I'd say our default interest levels are spelled out clearly within our contracts. However, the reality of commercial loan contracts is that they are long and extensive documents, which is why customers very often get, obviously, lawyers to review them. I'd be surprised if a lawyer was saying that they couldn't identify where the default interest was in a contract.
This is where it gets very interesting. The benefit of this structure to Bankwest is threefold. Firstly, Bankwest receives its value back on the loans through the warranty clause in the share sale agreement. That's part of that document I tendered. Secondly, Bankwest receives tax concessions against their operating income, or the CBA, because it's the CBA, it's a wholly owned subsidiary. Thirdly, the key thing for the committee to consider is that Bankwest still has the asset that originally secured the loan. This is the inducement I refer to. When Bankwest sell the asset that secures the loan, it is 100% profit. This directly contradicts the Commonwealth Bank's assertion that it is not in their interest to impair loans. This process could be described as double dipping and then some.